But there's a unique story in the Bible. It's called the parable or the story of the sower. S-O-W-E-R. The sower in the ancient days was the person that planted the crops, very simply. They got the ground ready, and the sower with a bag of seed would walk across the ground, sow the seed. That's how they got the crops going. And it's a very fascinating story, and it's got a lot to say, and it's got a lot to say about our subject called the law of averages. There's some important points you'll pick up right away when you read the story. Here's number one. The sower was a wise man. A great advantage. Right? They didn't send a dummy out to plant. Number two, he was very ambitious. And by the time you finish the story, you'll come to the conclusion he was ambitious. Admirable quality. Ambition. Now that has to be tempered. One writer said, I've learned to be both ambitious and content. That's a unique place to finally arrive, to be both ambitious and content. But this story says the sower was very ambitious. Nothing wrong with ambition, as long as you work the right formula. The Bible probably gives the greatest formula for wealth and power. It says, be faithful over small amounts and we'll make you ruler over much. Good philosophy. Right. Which teaches us, number one, I think it's okay to wish to be a ruler. Nothing wrong with that. But here's how you become a ruler. Good stewardship when the amounts are small. The guy says, oh, if I had a fortune, I'd take good care of it, but I've just got a paycheck, so I don't know where it goes. I say, no. When we really check your faithfulness is when the amounts are small. I said to Mr. Schoaf when I met him at age 25, I said, you know, if I had more money, I'd have a better plan. He said, Mr. Rohn, I would suggest to you if you had a better plan, you'd have more money. It's not the amount that counts. It's the philosophy that executes your plan that counts. If a child has $1, what should he do with it? It's very important. It's going to determine the rest of his life, what he does with $1. You say, well, it's just a child and it's just $1. We call that massive errors in judgment. It's only a child and it's only $1. What a colossal mistake to make in analyzing. If a child is allowed to spend the whole dollar and they don't have the sense of where that could take them, we call that the greatest disservice to a child. Not to explain to them the journey and the road you select when you spend the whole dollar. So if a child wants to spend the whole dollar, you say, no, you can't spend the whole dollar. Child says, why not? Say, well, let me show you why not. And you take him to the other side of town. And say, would you like to live here? Here's where the people live that spend all they make. Here's where they live. There's nothing better than visual to illustrate to a child. Show them the tragic circumstances if you spend all you make, if you spend all you've got. And kids will come home with their big wide eyes. Say, would you like to live here? Would you like to live like this? Kid says, no, I wouldn't want to live here. Then you can't spend the whole dollar. Okay, back to my story. The sower was bright and he was also ambitious. Number three, he went to work. It takes activity to furnish the labor that brings new life. Ideas without labor are stillborn. They never become tangible. They never become real. You got to put yourself through the activity, through the labor. So when you read the story, you'll find this was a hard-working sower. We call that admirable quality. Now, some interesting things that happened to the sower. It said he had excellent seed, point 4. He had the best. At least the scenario of the story says he had the best of seed. Boy, it's exciting when you feel that you're involved in the best product, the best service, the best idea, the best enterprise, something you feel proud about. Okay. But that's important, to have what you consider the best. Now, with all of these qualities, he starts out and now starts to unfold the scenario of life called the law of averages. Here's what happened. The sower goes out to sow the seed, and the first part of the seed that he sows falls by the wayside, and the birds get it. Now, I want you to understand the scenario. Here's what's very important for leaders to engage in, to teach the inevitable. It's very important to teach the inevitable. Key for leadership. Leaders must understand birds. Why? Birds are going to get part of the seed. It's called inevitable. And if you don't teach inevitability, people will be all upset. They won't know what to expect. We must all be prepared for what we call eventualities, the inevitable. So here's part of the scenario. The sower goes out to sow the seed, and the birds get some. He sows some more seed, and the birds get it. Now, this is a typical story of life. Is that fairly typical? Fairly typical. The birds are going to get some of the seed. Some of you building an organization, right? You're out recruiting. Say, John, I've got an important story for you to listen to. Could be the change of your life, earn some extra money, or make it a full-time venture, whatever. But come and take a look. And he says, well, I think I'm ready for something like that. Thursday night, I'll see you, and let's go through it all. You say, wonderful. Comes Thursday night. John isn't there. You say, where is John? The birds. The birds. The birds. Who knows what form they come in? I don't know. It's called the inevitable. The inevitable. His brother-in-law said, sales? You're not going to get mixed up in sales. Who told you you were a salesman? All kinds of stuff that talk people out of a good idea. I don't know. Now, when the birds get some of the seed, you got one of a couple of choices. Number one, you can chase birds. You say, well, I'll go straighten this out. Well, here's the problem if you go try chasing birds to straighten things out. You have now left the field. And the law of averages isn't going to work for you anymore till you get back to the field. This is so important to know. What to spend your time on and what not to waste your time on. There's two ways to have the tallest building in town. One is tear all the other buildings down. Right? Now yours is the tallest. But we call that the hardest of tasks. Right? You might get the first one down, right? The guy's gone. You got his building down. The next one, right? Maybe not be that difficult. But about the third building you start for, a guy's standing out in front. And he says, I've heard about you. Formidable, right? Now you got some problems because you're not known as a builder. You're known as a wrecker. A destroyer. You put everything down to try to make you look good. We call that massive errors in judgment. The best thing to do is to spend your energy and time on the things that count and understand the law of averages. Okay? And not chase the birds, but to stay in the field. Here's what it said the wise man did. He ignored the birds, and he kept on sowing. Why? He was so bright, he understood the law of averages. Now, here was some more of his experiences. Now he keeps on sowing the seed. Now the seed falls on rocky ground, and the soil was shallow. We call this inevitable. I don't know how to miss this. This is called the stuff of life. It's so important to understand the seasons and the stuff of life and the ratios and the inevitables. This is so important, especially as a leader, so that you can help people through understanding how it is. This is called one of those things. And it said this time the seed takes root and the little plant starts to grow, but the soil is so shallow that the first hot day, the little plants wither and die. You say, wow, what a disappointment. Well, sure, you're going to be disappointed. Some people are going to try so little, even if you've got a good idea. 30 days later, you say, we had this meeting, John wasn't here. So where is John? I said, I don't know. You say, well, I thought sure John had last 30 days. But he didn't. Why? It's called inevitable. Right? And who knows the reason why? John isn't here anymore. Somebody said, boo. And he quit. He quit. First hot day. Now, you're going to be disappointed, especially if it's somebody you like, somebody you know. But here's what you must learn to do as a leader. Discipline your disappointment. This is part of the challenge of life, disciplining the disappointment. Understanding the law of averages. Now, here's what it said the wise man did. He kept on sowing. How brilliant. He was so well schooled in the law of averages. Now he keeps on sowing, and this time the seed falls on thorny ground. You say, well, how much of this ground can you get? Well, just hang on. It's not the end of the story. Now, this time he sows the seed, it falls on thorny ground, and the little plant starts to grow, but the thorns choke it to death, and it dies. Wow, what's this called? The inevitable. Do you know what the story called the thorns? The cares of life, little cares. Who knows the excuses some people use for not pushing on through and getting the job done? It's called inevitable. Some people are going to try so little. They're going to let other things crowd out the good opportunities. And who knows why? I don't know why. I'm an amateur on this stuff. The key is to take the inevitable and take the obvious, right? Everybody should take obvious 1, obvious 2. Right? Study the obvious and not let it unduly disturb you, and learn to manage the obvious so you can get on with the more important things in life. Who knows? I called John up. I said, John, where were you last night? We had this meeting. John says, well, I can't make every meeting. I say, why not? John says, well, I got a lot of other things I got to do. I say, what are they? You won't believe the list John gave me. The backyard fence was sagging and the dogs are about to get loose. You just can't let your dogs run loose. I say, okay, John. John says, the screen door came off the hinges. And you just can't let things fall apart. You got to take time, keep things fixed up. I say, okay, John. Some extra trash had piled up in the garage. You just can't let mountains of trash take over. You got to take care of your trash. I say, okay, John. On the phone, I can hear the thorns going, oh. Some people have the incredible ability to major in minor things. I don't know why. We call this inevitable. We call it a mystery. It's part of the scenario of life. I'm driving through the little community. John's out there mowing his lawn. He's cussing the weeds, and he's red in the face, and he's about to explode. I said, John, what are you doing? He says, what does it look like I'm doing? I'm mowing this lousy lawn. I said, John, there's all kinds of little neighborhood boys around here. Mow your lawn. He says, they want $5. I'll mow it myself. I'll mow it myself. Okay, John. Okay. Number one, there should be a law against cheating some little neighborhood boy out of $5. Now, why the scenario? The scenario of the story of the sower is to prepare us for the inevitable called the law of averages. Now here's what it says. The sower kept on sowing. He was so bright, evidently he'd been schooled in these numbers of about how many are going to let the birds, and about how many the hot weather's going to take, and about how many are going to let little things cheat him out of big chances. Right? He must have gone through the school because he understood. He kept on sowing. Now here's what it says. The seed falls on good ground. Let me give you a promise as a leader. It always will. Key phrase. If you share a good idea often enough, it'll fall on good people. Why? The law of averages. Now, even the good ground had a variety of productivity. It said part of the good ground produced 30%. Wow. And it said part of the good ground produced 60%. Terrific. And it said part of the good ground produced 100%. What's that called? The law of averages. That's the way it is. It's called one of those things. Now, can you find some 100%ers? The answer is yes, but you got to go through the birds and the hot weather and the thorns and cares, and you've got to find some way to use the 30%ers and the 60%ers. And if you become entrusted as a skillful leader and learn the law of averages and learn how to deal with all this, you'll have some 100%ers to deal with, to work with. The law of averages.